expert at uninformed arguments? Am I an expert at uninformed arguments? Man, we have all been guilty of that at one time or another in our lives, but is that how we are trying to do this bridge building work? Are we speaking out of uninformed spaces? There's been times that I tried to resolve something that I really didn't even know what I was talking about. I thought I had it figured out, but I really didn't. So I posed that question to you today because specifically, we continue to be in a time of heightened racial tension. The reality is that people are still struggling to find their voice and the ability to have productive conversations that help build bridges. We're struggling with that. We get frustrated, we get confused, we get angry, emotions take over because we have not found our voice. We have not come to a place in our lives to have these constructive healing conversations. So we still need help. So, here's what's going on. Now that for the most part, the protests, all of the rallies have mostly subsided, at least in comparison to what was happening when George Floyd was murdered. People, especially white people, hey, I can speak about this. People, especially white people, are kind of settling back into their routines, not wanting to do the hard work of bringing about the change needed to make this world a better place. It's just too easy for us when things kind of settle down to kind of settle back into our inactive anonymity, and just get back into our routine without wanting to do the hard work that is necessary to bring about the healing that we need up these racial cultural lines. But what we really need to do? We need to start educating ourselves about what people who don't look like us are really going through, facing in our lives. We've got to quit making it about us, and we got to learn how to listen and learn. We got to learn how to be able to see life through other lenses, through other people's experience. We have to learn how to look at what's going on through other people's eyes. As people of color continue to fight for change, more injustices are coming to light. And when those injustices come to light, those exposed injustices have a tendency to make people who look like me, who look like some of us, uncomfortable. And the problem with that is, here's what people who look like me have a tendency to do. It's here where we have a tendency to implement a couple what I call survival tactics. And I want to share those with you today. What we do a lot of times, we avoid it. We shut the TV off. We quit listening to what is going on. In other words, we kind of stick our head in the sand. And what we do is we hide in our white spaces until it blows over. If it's not close to home, if it's not in my family, it's not my problem. I'm not racist. I love everybody. And so we just kind of, in order to survive and not deal with the issues that are going on, we stick our head in the sand. And then secondly, here's another thing we do. We need to appease our guilt and our shame about all these injustices that are going on. So whether subconsciously or consciously, I want you to listen to this. We start looking for reasons why that horrible thing happened. There must be a reason. Something must have happened. That person must have done something to deserve what happened to it. There has to be reasons for the injustices that were perpetrated. And the problem with that is that the news media, other people are quick to give us little tidbits of information that are totally unrelated, that somehow in our minds, bring some justification, and somehow that sadistically appeases us. Let me ask you a question. Just a few weeks ago, the verdict came down in the Derek Chauvin case in the George Floyd murder. And I want to ask you, how many of you that were white that are white, excuse me, were so relieved that Derek Chauvin was convicted of George Floyd's murder. I know I was. I can't tell you the relief that I felt in my heart when justice was served. But you know what? It's not over. That didn't end racism. That didn't end what has happened in the past. That hasn't ended what's going on. That was one instance. Thank God justice was served in that. But you know what? We can't just go, whew, like it's over now, because it's not over. And even though most of the changes people of color are calling for, listen to this, are systemic, have to do with policies and laws that have marginalized them, that have justified inhumane treatment, a lot of people like me who look like me take that personally. Sometimes, we get upset about how certain people are going about certain things to expose injustices. It's at that point in time, it's right here when we start doing damage, when we sometimes start saying hurtful things. It's like we roll our eyes and we say, I didn't own slaves. I'm not racist. That happened in the past. I love all people. I don't see color. I just see people. We say things like, I don't understand why it always has to be about race. When I was growing up, I got bussed. I got abused by people of color. White privilege has never helped me. And it just goes on and on and on. And I want to ask you just to consider how hurtful that can be to people of color. When we act like that and say things like that, even when we say we love and care about people of color, even when we say we love all people, we see everybody the same, and yet then we say hurtful things like that. It's here, right here. And there's so many other things that I could have listed that I've said, that so many times, so many of us have said, that are so hurtful that sometimes just shut down people of color in our presence. Isn't that the argument that the religious leaders made in the story of the Good Samaritan? He deserved it. Isn't that what justified them walking by? Isn't that what justified them not caring? Oh, he deserved it. He knew that he shouldn't have been on the road. He knew he shouldn't have been traveling at that particular time of day. He got what he deserved, and they walked by. White evangelicals have become notorious with this kind of behavior. Billy Graham told Martin Luther King that the civil rights movement was moving too fast. Billy Graham refused to speak about social justice issues. And there's even a lot of people today who believe that we shouldn't talk about social justice in the church. But did you know that Billy Graham later said that he was wrong and that he wished he hadn't done that? I remember about how when Martin Luther King was in Birmingham protesting and he got thrown in jail, how a bunch of white evangelical pastors who look like me, got together and wrote him a letter while he's sitting in jail for being involved in the protests, and told him that he was going about it all wrong. They basically told the man sitting in a prison cell that he was going about it all wrong. The reality is that history has shown that all of their arguments were ill-informed. They were wrong. They were hurtful. And they produced a wedge that continues to survive between the black church and the white church even today. It's why we continue to be so segregated even today. It's why we still don't get each other, don't understand each other. The reality is that at some point in time, as white people, we have to humble ourselves. We have to quit acting like we've got this all figured out. like we have all the answers. We have to humble ourselves enough to listen and to learn to avoid the temptation to start passing judgment and making uninformed arguments. A few days ago, I shared a post on social media about our topic today. I shared a post by Jamar Tisby, and then I made this statement. I used to be an expert at uninformed arguments. I used to be an expert at uninformed arguments. If you don't understand that statement, I was just trying to admit that there was a time in my life when I would have done all the above things that we have talked about today, the things that we have shared with you about today. When it came to racism, the issues of racism, dealing with racism, it was just easier for me to argue about things that I knew nothing about than it was to just shut up and listen and learn. Do you realize that people of color have been talking about racism for centuries, have been writing books, writing articles, writing magazines, holding webinars, have been sharing things on social media for centuries? So my question to you is, are you listening to any of them? Have you read any of their books? I know there's a lot of white people like myself who are out there doing this, but if you want to learn about somebody else's experience, why don't you read their book? Why don't you get on their website? Why don't you sign up for whatever learning platform that they are presenting to you? If all you're doing is listening to white people, then find some people of color that have been talking about this stuff forever. Have you taken the course, What Lies Between Us? Have you gone to brownicity.com and checked out the learning platform that Dr. Lucretia Carter-Berry has created for us? So may we be people of peace with voices of hope, doing the hard work of love. I love you. I'll see you next time.